Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Abandoned at a young age by her mother, Emily Carter grew up in poverty, guided only by her survival instinct. Her life changes the day she finds herself in grave danger, threatened by creditors and enemies she never sought. In a desperate act to save her life, she agrees to marry Ryan Mitchell, a humble mechanic whom she believes to be nothing special, thinking that this marriage could protect her and provide her with a roof over her head. However, Ryan is hiding a secret. He is actually the heir to a vast fortune, the owner of a technology company and several properties across the country. This marriage, which Emily thought was simply a means of survival, becomes the beginning of a complete upheaval in her life. Emily gradually discovers the truth. Her husband, far from being a simple mechanic, is a man of influence, capable of changing her destiny. But will she be able to accept this unexpected love while facing her painful past and the wounds left by her mother's abandonment? Emily Carter watched the rain fall through the window of her small, dingy hotel room. At only 22, she had already learned that life could be cruel. Her mother had abandoned her at birth, leaving her alone with a cold aunt who never showed tenderness. Emily had grown up learning to fend for herself, to hide her tears, and to survive on what she had. That evening, as she walked the narrow city streets after a grueling waitressing job, she felt a presence behind her. Two men, apparently sent by a creditor, surrounded her. Their voices were menacing, and Emily knew she had no choice. She had to run. It was at this moment that she met Ryan Mitchell, tall, with a serious face and hands covered in mechanic's grease. He was working late in his garage. Emily instinctively fled there, begging him for help. Ryan looked her in the eye and, without question, offered a radical solution: marry him, at least temporarily, to protect her from her pursuers. Emily, desperate, accepted. She didn't know that this quiet and humble mechanic hid an identity no one could imagine. Ryan was heir to a vast fortune and owner of a successful business. This marriage, intended as a simple refuge, would change his life forever. As they signed the papers and the rain continued to fall, Emily felt a mixture of fear and curiosity. She didn't yet know that behind this marriage of necessity lay the beginning of an unexpected destiny and a love story that would change her forever. Over the next few days, Emily adjusted to her new life with Ryan. Their modest home, located near his garage, seemed simple and ordinary. Yet, Emily sometimes sensed a strangeness in the way Ryan spoke on the phone or in the way people greeted him when he appeared in certain places. One evening, while tidying the kitchen after dinner, she happened to find a small metal safe in Ryan's office. Curious, she opened it discreetly and discovered official documents, stocks, company contracts, and bank certificates worth unimaginable sums. Her heart raced. Ryan, the humble mechanic who had saved her, was actually an extremely wealthy and influential businessman. Emily felt a mixture of shock, confusion, and suspicion. Why had he never told her his true identity? Was this a test, or simply a precaution? The feelings she was beginning to have for him were becoming more complicated with this revelation. The next day, Ryan walked in on her tidying up the trunk. He smiled softly. "I see you found my little secret," he said. Emily stepped back, flushed with embarrassment and anger. Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered. Ryan approached, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Because I wanted you to love me for me, not for my wealth. And believe me, Emily, I didn't want this story to scare you." Emily felt her emotions mix, anger, relief, and a thrill of admiration. She began to understand that this marriage, which she had thought was simply an arrangement to save her life, was perhaps the beginning of a real story, full of complexity, secrets, and promises. But she still didn't know how much her life would be turned upside down by what Ryan's wealth and power would attract around them. Despite the unexpected comfort of her new life, Emily couldn't escape the shadows of her past. The threats that had driven her to marry Ryan still seemed to hang over her. One evening, as she was returning from dinner with Ryan, she noticed a black car parked near their house. Her heart sank. Ryan, attentive to her anxiety, took her hand. "Is something wrong?" he asked calmly. Emily shook her head, but her eyes betrayed her fear. What she didn't know was that Ryan's wealth had also attracted envious and dangerous glances. Competitors, creditors, and even people from her own past, ready to take advantage of her vulnerability, were on the prowl. The next day, an anonymous letter arrived, subtle threats, signed by someone who seemed to know every detail of Emily's life. Trembling, she showed the letter to Ryan. Without a word, he contacted his lawyers and increased security around their house and garage. "You have nothing to fear," he said, hugging her. "I will protect you, always." Emily felt a deep mixture of admiration and guilt. She had married to survive, but she was beginning to realize that she was really falling in love with the man behind the mechanic. That night, as she fell asleep in his arms, Emily realized her life had changed forever. She was no longer alone, and even though danger still lurked, she had found an ally, a protector, and perhaps, for the first time, true love. But the past had not said its last word, and Emily would soon discover that certain truths could upset her heart as much as her life. Over time, Emily began to discover the true scope of Ryan's life. What she had thought was a simple mechanic was actually a man capable of running gigantic businesses, negotiating international contracts, and making life-changing decisions. One afternoon, Ryan took her to his headquarters. Emily, speechless, wandered among the luxurious offices and the employees who greeted her with respect. She realized then how much she had underestimated her husband. It wasn't just his wealth that impressed, but his intelligence, his charisma, and the way he inspired loyalty. However, this revelation was also intimidating. Emily wondered if she could ever truly belong in this world, if she would be judged for her humble background. Ryan, seeing her worries, gently took her hand. "Emily, you don't need to change who you are. You're the one I married, not some fabricated version of yourself." That evening, as they dined together, Emily felt a deep bond growing between them. Their marriage, initially a necessity, gradually became a sincere union, based on trust and mutual admiration. But the calm was deceptive. That evening, Ryan received a mysterious call in his office. Emily, hiding behind the half-open door, heard words that made her heart race. "If you don't give us what we want, she'll pay the price." Emily realized then that their happiness was fragile. Her past and Ryan's secrets would soon converge, and their budding love would be tested by forces they could not control. For the first time in a long time, Emily felt fear not only for herself, but for the person she loved. And she knew that to survive this storm, she would have to draw on a courage she didn't know she possessed. A few days after the mysterious call, Emily felt the tension growing around them. Strangers were watching her, anonymous letters were arriving, and even some of the garage employees were strangely curious about her. Every corner seemed to hide danger. One evening, as she walked home alone from the market, Emily was suddenly pushed into a dark alley. Her heart pounded, and she immediately recognized one of the men who had threatened her before her wedding. Their intentions were clear: they wanted to make her suffer in order to get to Ryan. As she prepared to fight, Ryan miraculously appeared, his massive, determined figure emerging from the shadows. In an instant, he incapacitated the men and held her close. "Emily, you have to trust me," he said, panting. "I'll never leave you alone." Sitting in the trunk of Ryan's car, trembling, Emily realized she had to make a big decision: keep running and stay in the shadows, or face these dangers with Ryan by her side. She felt an inner strength awaken. Her past of survival alone had hardened her, and she knew she no longer wanted to be a victim. "I'm staying with you," she said finally, her voice firm. "No matter what happens." Ryan smiled, both proud and moved. Their union, born of necessity, was now transforming into a true partnership, based on trust and courage. But they still didn't know that their enemies would stop at nothing, and that the trials ahead would test not only their love, but their ability to survive and protect those they loved. After the alley attack, Emily and Ryan realized that running away was no longer an option. They had to confront those who threatened them. Ryan used his contacts and resources to investigate the individuals behind the letters and attacks. Emily, despite her fear, decided to help him. Her survival instincts and street knowledge proved invaluable in understanding the enemies. One evening, while working in Ryan's office, they discovered that the plot came from jealous competitors of Ryan's family business, ready to do anything to weaken his position. Emily, impressed by her husband's strength and intelligence, felt her admiration transform into deep love. "We'll face them together," Ryan said, placing his hand on hers. "No matter the danger, we're stronger together." Emily nodded, a new determination in her eyes. For the first time, she felt that she was not only protected, but that she could act, influence the situation, and defend her life. As the days passed, their relationship intensified. Between plans to counter their enemies, they found moments of tenderness and complicity. Emily discovered the real Ryan, not just the wealthy heir or the mechanic, but a man capable of true love, patience, and loyalty. Yet despite this newfound closeness, the threat persisted. Each day brought its own challenges and dangers, reminding Emily that their happiness was never a given. But for the first time in a long time, she no longer felt alone and knew that, hand in hand with Ryan, she could face anything that stood in their way. Despite their preparation, Emily and Ryan were blindsided by a betrayal that struck them right in the heart. One of Ryan's trusted employees, Marcus, whom they considered loyal, had secretly made a deal with their enemies to get a share of Ryan's fortune. One morning, Emily noticed that some important documents had disappeared from the office. Her instincts immediately alerted her. She spoke to Ryan, and together they discovered the truth. Marcus had provided competitors with sensitive information about Ryan's movements, putting not only their business at risk, but their lives as well. Emily felt a burning anger mixed with a sense of betrayal. Ryan, usually calm and collected, showed an icy firmness for the first time. "Trust is earned, Emily." And Marcus just betrayed it. But instead of giving in to immediate revenge, Ryan devised a strategy to counter Marcus and their enemies. Emily, determined to prove her worth, offered her help. Together, they devised a cunning plan to turn the tide to their advantage, using Emily's intelligence and instincts to surprise their opponents. As the days passed, their bond strengthened. The ordeal of betrayal showed them that they could count on each other, and that their love was not fragile in the face of outside manipulation. Emily understood that her marriage, born of necessity, had become a true alliance where courage, loyalty, and passion intertwined. But the challenges weren't over. Marcus's betrayal was just a taste of the more dangerous and unexpected trials life had in store for Emily and Ryan. And deep down, Emily felt that to protect their happiness, she would have to confront her own fears and long-buried secrets. Just as Emily began to feel stronger and more confident around Ryan, her past unexpectedly resurfaced. One morning, a letter arrived at their home, a letter from her mother, the one who had abandoned her. The words, cold and manipulative, suggested she was ready to return, but on one condition: to get a piece of Ryan's fortune and insert herself into their lives. Emily felt her stomach clench. Everything she had built, everything she had learned about trust and love, suddenly seemed threatened by this mother figure who had never been there for her. Ryan, seeing her distress, took her in his arms. "No matter who comes back," he said softly, "I'll be there for you. We'll face this together." Emily realized then that her mother represented more than just a financial threat. She embodied the fear, abandonment, and wounds of her childhood. For the first time, Emily realized that to protect her future with Ryan, she had to face these ghosts and no longer run from her past. With Ryan's support, she decided to confront her mother. Their meeting was tense, fraught with pent-up emotions and silent reproaches. Emily, for the first time, set clear boundaries and asserted her independence. Her mother, surprised by her daughter's strength and maturity, could only realize that Emily was no longer the vulnerable young girl she had abandoned. This confrontation changed Emily. She felt freer, stronger, and closer to Ryan than ever before. Their love, forged through danger and hardship, was strengthened. But Emily knew that other, even greater obstacles awaited them. The outside world and Ryan's enemies would not leave them alone so easily. The peace Emily and Ryan were beginning to feel was abruptly interrupted. One evening, while they were having dinner at home, a group of strangers forced their way into their house. Ryan's enemies, empowered by the information Marcus had divulged, were determined to take everything: fortune, power, and Emily. Ryan reacted instantly. Thanks to the security measures he had put in place, he managed to protect Emily and neutralize some of the attackers. Emily, far from remaining passive, showed courage and determination, using her instincts and composure to help Ryan contain the situation. "We have to stick together," Ryan shouted, looking Emily straight in the eyes. "I'll never lose you." The fight was intense, but their strategy worked. Emily and Ryan managed to capture the attackers and recover evidence of the plots against Ryan. The threats finally stopped, and a feeling of relief mixed with triumph washed over Emily. That night, sitting in Ryan's arms, she realized how much their lives had changed since the day she met him in his garage. This marriage, born of fear and survival, had transformed into a deep love, based on trust, complicity, and shared courage. Emily realized she was no longer the vulnerable, abandoned girl she once was. She had become a strong woman, capable of standing up for what she loved and facing her fears. And most importantly, she knew that with Ryan by her side, she could overcome any obstacle. But in the calm that followed the storm, Emily also knew that the real test lay not only in the battle against enemies, but in their ability to build a happy and peaceful future together, despite all the wounds of the past. After the storm and the trials, Emily and Ryan could finally breathe. The threat of their enemies had been neutralized, Marcus had been confronted and removed, and Emily's mother, realizing she could no longer manipulate her daughter, had disappeared from their lives. For the first time in years, Emily felt safe and free. She realized that her marriage, which had begun out of necessity, had become a true union based on respect, love, and trust. Ryan, for his part, saw in Emily not only the woman he loved, but also a partner capable of supporting him through life's challenges. They decided to celebrate their love in a small, intimate wedding, surrounded only by those they trusted. Emily wore a simple yet elegant gown, a symbol of her life's transformation and maturity. Ryan, smiling, waited for her with tenderness and admiration. "You've survived so many storms, Emily," he whispered, taking her hand. "And look at us now, finally at peace." Emily smiled, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. "Yes, Ryan. We've come through the shadows to reach the light. And now, we can finally live for ourselves." Hand in hand, they left the ceremony hall under a starry sky. The rain of their first meeting now seemed distant, replaced by the warmth and light of a future they had chosen together. Emily knew she would never be alone, that her past could no longer define her, and that the love she shared with Ryan was strong enough to overcome any obstacle. Their story, born from a marriage of survival, had become a personal legend of courage, confidence, and newfound happiness. And so, Emily and Ryan began a new chapter in their lives, free, united, and deeply in love, ready to face the future side by side, whatever came.